All right, everybody, welcome back to my FAQ series. This is for brand new hosts who are listing their very first unit on Airbnb. I'm Susanna. I'm an Airbnb ambassador, full-time real estate investor, and short-term rental host. I'm sharing tips and tricks and things I've learned along the way in my 5 years in the world of Airbnb. So today we're going to talk about preventing problem guests. Let me preface this FAQ with a little bit of background on my belief about the hospitality business. There tend to be two camps of hosts. There's one camp that sees the guests as out to get them, and I am not in that camp. I am in the camp of seeing myself as a hospitality business, and I'm here to provide an amazing service for whoever comes through my doors. So I invite you, new host, to run your business in that way and to see yourself as a hospitality provider. So when you're setting filters for booking your reservations, that's part of having some boundaries within which to run your business and to make sure that you're comfortable and you're giving yourself the best chance of success. But you never want to turn that into something that seems hostile or anti-guest, or as if the guest exists to serve the host. We're here to serve our guests, but it is important to have really good boundaries and make sure we know how we want to run our reservations and how we want to run our business. And then once we put that in place, we are better equipped to be as hospitable and therefore as successful as we possibly can be. Okay, so today we're going to talk about preventing problem guests. If you have been on Facebook forums or the internet at all in your pursuit of opening an Airbnb unit, I'm sure you have seen horror stories. And I find that Airbnb horror stories are clickbait. You know, that is what sells. So you see a lot of that online, and there certainly are some horror stories out there. However, let me just start by reassuring you that in the thousands of stays that I have hosted over the years, I can count on one hand severely problem guests that I've experienced. And thanks to the rating system on Airbnb, most guests really want to get a good rating at the end of their stay. A lot of guests are used to Airbnb. They're used to being a conscientious traveler. And I've just had an amazing experience with my guests most of the time. But early on, I did have a couple of problem issues with guests, and I learned through just doing so much volume from a larger portfolio how to filter out guests that were going to be potentially problematic. So what I will give you today is just a filter that I use. Now, let me preface this by saying this is a hot topic. This is a controversial topic. There are very likely many ways that you can filter. You also may want to take more risk and filter less than I do, and that's totally fine. So I'm going to tell you what's worked for me and what has kept my portfolio in good shape, my team from going absolutely crazy. When I say that we have had 5 problem guests in all of these stays, I also want to mention that 2 of those were times that we violated our filters. So that's what's crazy. I mean, that's how well this filter works. That when I think, man, if I just really remember like, ooh, that was bad. 2 of them happened after we had our filter system in place, and one was during a slow season, and I let something slide and I hoped for the best, and it was terrible. And then another one, I was out of town and I had a team member who kind of got manipulated into feeling bad for the person. And so she let part of the filter slide and we let another disaster through. So when I'm talking about how much filtering, how you book your reservations is going to help you, it's really going to help you. Okay, so I can't speak for every Airbnb host who has ever lived, but in my experience, the guests that have caused problem for us are guests who book on the same day, guests who don't have reviews, and guests who are local to the area. So when you have a booking inquiry that has all 3 of those factors, there is a high chance that could be a problem guest. But that has just been our experience. So we have gotten to the point where all of our settings on Airbnb are going to prevent someone who's a same-day request, local, no review guest from booking unless we talk to them in detail about it. So I'm going to tell you how to set this up in your system. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is set our settings so that anyone who instantly books the space has to have prior reviews from another host. So that's going to take care of that no reviews issue. So when it comes to using Instant Book, I do recommend using it because of the placement in the algorithm. It's easier for guests, it's easier for you, but you can put some additional requirements in that make using Instant Book a little bit safer, and it's going to give you some safeguards where you can ask additional questions if you need to. Get into your listing, you're going to go to policies and rules, and then right there you can see your cancellation policy. Just under that is Instant Book. So go to edit. You can choose to put Instant Book on. Like I said, I do recommend that. I think it's going to help you get bookings. But beneath that screen, you can toggle on some additional requirements. So if people Instant Book, they have to, for example, have a government ID. So a license or, some form of identification that's legit. And then 100%, please turn on the host recommendation required. So that means that if people are going to Instant Book with you, they've already had a good review from another host. Now, this is very important. Guests who don't have reviews yet, they can still send you an inquiry and ask about booking your unit, but you will have the chance to talk to them first, make sure you have enough time in advance, all of that, and accept it. Now for me, if they're booking it a week in advance, 2 weeks in advance, 3 weeks in advance, they don't have reviews, I'm going to go ahead and accept them, no questions asked. But if it was going to be last minute, I'd certainly ask questions if I did want to take that reservation. So it's going to be very important in your Instant Book settings to toggle on these additional requirements just to make sure guests have been a little bit more vetted if they're going to be able to book a reservation without speaking with you first. Okay, the next factor we're going to go through is the same day notice requirement that I mentioned. So as I said before, last minute guests can at times be higher risk. This is not everyone by any means. So I'm just talking about trends. By no means am I saying a last minute guest is 100% all of the time a problem. If it's combined with the other two factors, there's a good chance. But again, not trying to accuse anyone of anything, but these are just the things that we found. I book last minute all the time, but I also have 20 great reviews, so it doesn't really matter. All right, now I'm in pricing and availability. You're gonna scroll down to availability and advanced notice. This is where you choose how much notice you need to accept a reservation. So on this one, I have 3 days notice, but normally I do 1 day's notice. And then you can click this button on for Instant Book hosts, allow guests to send reservation requests without advance notice. So what that means is that even if someone is trying to book same day and you require 2 days notice or 3 days notice or 1 day's notice, you can still receive the inquiry from them and choose to manually accept it. But you'll have the option to ask an additional question if you have any questions, or just to check it out and make sure it's something that you're going to be comfortable with. So that combination of an advance notice setting and the Instant Book settings toggled on so that guests have reviews helps a ton as far as just letting people slip through. Again, anyone can still inquire even if they don't meet these requirements, but you'll get the chance to talk to them first, and I've just found that to be really helpful. Last but not least, I mentioned one of the warning signs that I look out for is a local guest who's booking last minute that does not have reviews. Now, this one has become a bit more difficult to track down. Sometimes you can see where a guest is from before they book, but a lot of times you can't tell where they're from before they book. So this is one where I would say use your discretion. If someone is trying to book last minute and they don't have reviews, you could ask, hey, where are you traveling from? Just something that's still done in a hospitable and gracious way. You never want to grill a guest, but it is totally fair to ask additional questions, especially if they're trying to come in last minute to your space. Another thing that I've noticed on this one is if someone sends you an inquiry and they say something like, hey, just need to get away, I'm from town. That one always scares me to death. Honestly, we've had some weird situations with that, and even some situations that were not all out bad, but they weren't great. So that's always kind of a flag for me. If people say something like they just need to relax, just trying to get away, and that inevitably that request is going to come in on the same day, and they're telling you they're from your same area. So that's a time, I think when it comes to being local, oftentimes that's harder to filter, but sometimes the guest will tell you that. guests do say, oh, hey, I'm waiting for the plumber, so I need a place last minute. In my experience, that's usually not legit. So, I mean, it certainly could be, but usually you can get a plumber to your house, you know what I mean? But I don't know, that's just me. And even if you want to take the risk and give everybody a chance, that's great. But by using these filters, you'll be able to talk to them first and make sure that you feel comfortable. Airbnb does penalize hosts for canceling stays without a good reason. So it's great to know that you feel comfortable with your guests before they book. Now, in some instances, if a guest does book and you don't feel comfortable, maybe you've realized through the conversation, I think they're going to throw a party or just something feels off, you can call Airbnb and talk through that. There are times where they're willing to cancel that stay for you. So it's definitely worth calling if you ever do feel uncomfortable about something. But if you do the work up front, you're going to have a lot less of those situations to contend with. So I hope this will be really helpful for you. I hope this will relieve your fears as you begin hosting. Feel free to ask questions or visit my website, stayosanctuary.com, for more tips on opening your first Airbnb.